am Julien Le Noohra, your host and creator of this event, and I'm truly honored to be speaking today with Frances Billinghurst. Welcome, Frances. It's a great joy to have you here.
Thank you, Julian. It's a pleasure to be here, but to be invited and to be part of your event.
Thank you so much for being part of this event. So let me introduce you to our audience in case they're not familiar yet with your work. Frances is a metaphysician, energetic healer, author, and death walker who has been an explorer of the sacred mysteries for most of her life. Her quest to understand the workings of the universe, both on a macrocosmic as well as a microcosmic level, has led her studying various esoteric sciences, receiving initiations into a number of mystery and hermetic traditions, and exploring ways in which mythology and sacred symbolism can be used to journey to the deep soul self. With a desire to share the knowledge gained and to guide other seekers, Frances founded the Mystery Soul Academy. It's available on mysterysoulacademy.com as a portal through which she offers not only energetic healings and spiritual guidance, but also classes that incorporate practical ways in how our lives can be enriched through striving to understand our place in the greater scheme of things, together with connection to the inner, mystical shadow self. As a prolific writer, Frances is the author of a number of books that focus on connecting with the natural cycles, utilizing mythology and sacred stories to enhance our human existence, and incorporating magic and ceremony into our daily lives. Frances can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, where she offers insights into incorporating astrology, ancient wisdom, meditation, spiritual connection, magical teachings, and much more into our daily lives. So your topic for today is surrendering to the other, entering the darkness to discover the light. So that sounds very interesting. So maybe first, how did you get interested in the unseen realms and what sparked your interest?
Oh, that's a very, I don't know, difficult question to sort of answer very concisely. Basically say that even from my earliest childhood memory that I can remember, I was one of those children who would not settle for a straightforward answer. I needed to know why things happened, how things happened. Luckily for me, both my parents were readers. My mother was actually a librarian, so she got me these sort of children's books that would sort of tell me why, tell me more, sort of explain the mysteries of the universe. And from there, it was a constant seeking of trying to find a place that resonated with me. I grew up in the country, so I wasn't sort of brought into any Christian upbringing or anything like that. So we're sort of free to explore religion. I had always believed or felt that there was something more than just this existence. There's also something more than just me that made up me. And I suppose that led me down a number of rabbit holes, exploring different belief systems, spiritualities, and even moving countries. I grew up in New Zealand. Now I live in Australia. I've been living here for probably longer than I lived in New Zealand now. And when I came to Australia, it was in the early 90s. It was sort of going through a metaphysical or a new age awakening. And Adelaide had a number of international speakers, renowned at the time. I think one of them in particular was Dr. Douglas Baker. He was from England, really big into the sort of esoteric astrology and metaphysical realms. And I guess for me, it was almost like I said, being guided by higher forces, I would like to think so, because I came across groups, I came across people, studied courses, anything from Celtic mythology that took me to England, and where I met other people over there, got into earth-centric spiritualities, danced around a few stone circles as you do when you're in England. And yes, there's always been, I said, this pulling that there is something more. And what I do today, I think through the energetic healing, even to going off and studying to be a level 1 yogi teacher, even though I can't pretzel myself like anything, but it was more the philosophy, that sort of Eastern philosophy of the chakras, the aurics, or our aura, that really sort of meshed and molded any sort of belief or idea that I had. And that sort of also sort of equally blended in with my interest in ancient mythologies, ancient cultures, and it also taken me to around the world to look at some amazing sites. Like recently it was Egypt, and it just sort of blown away as to how minute we are in such a vast cosmos with all sorts of possibilities and potentials out there, that we just need to step through the door to sort of open ourselves to. So I hope that sort of answers your question a little bit, Julien.
Yes, thank you very much. So you've always been a seeker, and the more you get to explore the unseen realms, the more you wanted to know. And this also led you to found a mystery school. Could you tell us more about it and what motivated you and why you started this mystery school?
Yes, that's the Mystical Soul Academy. It's sort of been a modern updation of, I had the Icean Center of Metaphysics 2 years ago, and I think developing more of a mystery school, sort of beginning to pull all my different threads together into one place. Well, there's the goal. Who knows? I said, forever being a seeker, depending on what I'm learning, what I'm interested in, I wanted a place where I could start sort of formulating more offerings, especially in this modern age where a lot of the teachings now are going online. Before I was very face-to-face. I'm still a little bit old-fashioned that way. I still like face-to-face contact. But in moving into sort of an online platform, or even having the opportunity to partake more in online events, you can get in touch with other opinions, other people who are of the same interests or beliefs that you are in, and share the word, basically. I feel that even though I'm not an astrologer, I have a very healthy interest in astrology. We are definitely going through a lot of change, and whether this is the age of Aquarius or something completely different, a rise in consciousness on our earth plane, it's almost like that, whether you believe in, I call it the other, divine forces, whatever, there's this pull to share our knowledge with everybody else or whoever is listening, to help guide and other people, and also to help sort of, as I said, bounce ideas off other people as well. So that was one of the driving forces behind the Mystical Soul Academy, moving from more of my sort of isolated place here in Australia and putting myself out there a little bit more in relation to the rest of the world for people to find me, basically.
Wonderful, thank you. So how did you become an energy healer, and how did you get aware that you had this ability in you, or that this ability had awakened in you?
Oh, that's a very good question too. One of the groups that I was involved with in relation to earth-centric spirituality, we would do a lot of, I don't know what we would call it back then. So this is back in the 90s. Do lots of rituals, ceremonies, and my hands would always get hot. And not being trained at that stage in any sort of energetic healing, I didn't really know what to do with that. So I was just sort of placing the body or directing it, using it sort of visualization, if we were using candles or crystals, and visualizing the energy flowing through me. And that was the only way at that stage that I felt I could sort of release this energy. And then 90, or let's have to think about 92, could even been a bit later. This sort of Reiki came onto the scene, very popular. And then I realized, I did a number of courses in Reiki, that what I was actually doing, and I wouldn't say it's a innate ability, maybe it is, but it was certainly awakened through one of the initiations that I went through, that what was coming through was actually energy. So I trained in Reiki, also trained in Palawa, and a few other sort of, I would call them sort of currents of energy healing. And these days, sort of working more with my intuition and also the other knowledge base that I've gained with crystals and also Orasuma sprays and essential oils, realized that, yeah, I have my sort of unique form of energy healing. I sort of, yes, I don't like to say that I'll just give someone a Reiki healing or a Palawa healing, because I fear whatever comes through will come through. And also with my experience in some of my rituals and ceremonies of channeling the divine, or I call it the other, that sort of enhanced it too. So it's almost like I'm sort of tapping into other information as to whatever the person who's come to see me, what they need. And I sort of step back consciously and just let whatever comes through. So sometimes I just see myself as a portal for the other, and to heal whoever needs healing that way.
So how long have you been practicing energy healing, and how many patients have you treated approximately?
The first awareness, as I said, was probably back in the 90s, but I said I would have been sort of untrained or unskilled in any Pacific current back then. So basically I've been doing it on and off since the 90s. I don't do it, it's not my full-time job. I do work in another industry. So I tend to flux with people that I see, depending on how busy or how much free time that I have. I do try and see at least a couple of people a month. I know it's not a huge number, but at the moment my interests are sort of moving into another area. And once I sort of get those other projects out of the way, and this is sort of like coming into next year, I sort of like reassess where I'm at. I do find that energy healing, because for me, maybe it's just how I work, I sort of give my all for it, and I find that only a couple of people a month is someone that for my own energy levels that I can actually handle. And I would rather give my time for people who I'm getting to understand or work with in their own energies, who really sort of need it, as opposed to anybody else sort of walking off the street. And I know that probably sounds a little bit elitist, but I find I'll rather teach someone as to how they can heal themselves, how they can open up those channels, as opposed to having them always come to me. I'm sort of really big into sort of helping people become aware that, at least the way that how I first came across it, is once you sort of plug yourself into, say, the unseen realms, into that healing channel, and that's something that we all have access to. Once you sort of open yourself up, understand what the energy is flowing through you, and then I do believe we're all unique in that way, then you can direct it to yourself or to heal other people as well.
Thank you very much. So yeah, you see yourself more as a facilitator to awaken the healing ability of each and everyone by themselves.
Yes, I think I do. And I think that sort of flows through with my interest in other stuff as well. The courses that I do, I'm sort of like, or how I design the courses is more along the lines to provide people with the tools and the techniques so they can then heal themselves, and sharing of the knowledge. And this is something that I think, or I like to believe, that probably was a way that we always used to do it. even if we go back in ancient history, our ancestors or the ancient peoples, yes, they did have people who were probably more skilled in certain areas than others, but there was a lot more sharing of the skills amongst everybody else, especially when it comes to, say, when you're talking about energetic healing, say the basics for everybody to do. And yes, of course, there's going to be instances where, like, say, even in our modern lives, to see a doctor or see a professional, you can heal yourself so far. And then there are instances where you've reached your limit and you need to see somebody else. But at least you've been able to sort of like heal or work through some basic underlying issues that have sort of prevented you from going about your day and moving forward, so you can sort of have a more better quality of life, or at least understand too of what is causing, say, an element or pain in your life or a blockage. And a lot of this comes back to energy and our relationship with energy, our relationship with our environment that we live in, and even our beliefs and how we've been sort of taught, and the blinkers or the lens that we look out as well. So I'm getting really off track now, sorry, Judy, but it also ties in with energy healing, because it's, to me, it's not just a one-stop shop. There's multiple layers that can actually add to, say, a problem or an issue that may not actually be that much of an issue or a problem to start off with.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you just mentioned that it's not a one-stop shop. So could you share your view on what you've learned about energy healing over the years?
Oh, as I said, I do believe that, and this probably flows through my understanding and my training and my teachings that I've undertaken on various metaphysical and esoteric sciences, that we are all sort of part of a huge matrix. And a lot of this stuff, I think, is almost beyond, as a human, our true understanding. We're sort of moving, science, quantum science is sort of proving some things, but a lot of it is, I do honestly believe, can be found in our ancient stories and our folklore, even in ancient Egypt on the hieroglyphs and in the Sumer and the cuneiform texts, that there is more to us than, to say, this physical cell. I call it a meat bag without being too offensive. I said the yogis talked about our energy systems, and the Chinese talked about the meridian lines, and every other culture seems to have a very similar or a way of sort of explaining that there's more to us, our relationship in the universe or our environment anyway, than what we may be aware of in this modern age. And then if you sort of move that further out, then you realize that we are connected with the universe as well. And this is belief that I have of the microcosm and the macrocosm. The microcosm is us, or the individual, me, myself, and the macrocosm is the universe, or even our environment around us. And there is a saying, as above, so below, as within, so without. And I don't know how many people of your audience may have heard of that, but it is one that, a saying that is often repeated within a lot of esoteric or metaphysical arenas, New Age arenas. And what it actually means is as above, say, the cosmos is reflected down into us, our life, and then as within, how we see our own life or our own body's health is reflected out, and also can relate to, we see the world through what's going on inside of us. So when we start beginning to understand that we're not individual, or as individual as we like to think we are, we're not as isolated as we like, well, we've been told that we are, that we are all part of cosmic web. And I think in shamanic teachings, they talk about this as well. We're not, anything that we do or think or say is all energy, and it all ripples out. It's almost like throwing a pebble into a pond, and the ripples all move out and affect anybody else around us, and then it goes out to our earth, and then even out into the cosmos. And we can see this over and over again. I don't know where you are in the world, but I know definitely over the last couple of years, you can almost see, I call it an egregore, which is sort of like a group consciousness of dissatisfaction, of, I wouldn't want to say hate and violence, because I think that's giving that sort of egregore, that group consciousness, a little bit too much, even though it's true. But disharmony, dissatisfaction, and it seems to be affecting more and more people, situations. It's getting to a stage now where I simply turn off the television and I cut myself off from media strands to sort of limit that negativity that is generated. And because I don't want to sort of be having that energy into my life all the time, or especially on the regularity that it is these days due to social media and 24-hour news channels. And understanding that we are all energetically connected too also means that we do have that responsibility, or that awareness, that what we put out there can actually either enhance or, I suppose, harm is the other one, or change. And if we want to change something, that maybe take a little bit of a little bit more insight as to what way we want to change things and how do we want to change things. So yes, understanding that we are all connected. And this is the way it's coming back to the first question when it comes to sort of facilitating, as you said, energetic healing. We are all connected to that, the energies in our planet, in our cosmos. So that means that basically we are all energetic healers, or we all have that potential to be a healer of some description, whether we want to step up to and take on that responsibility or not.
Yes, beautiful. Yes, once we find the heart, then we are able to connect to these energies and the higher self. So this is beautiful. So you also say that you are a death walker in your biography. Could you explain what a death walker is?
Yes, certainly. This is an interest that I've had for a number of years, or even more than that, but it sort of came to light when I was going through my own healing journey. And I've always been, I suppose it's a morbid curiosity, but interested in different perceptions we have in the world as a whole on death. Some cultures, they sort of embrace it, accept it as part of the natural cycle that we all go through of birth, life, death, rebirth. In our Western culture, we seem to push it aside and sort of bury it, even down to any, elderly people getting carted off into old age care homes. We sort of like close the doors, and so we ignore them, or we have 20-year-old models trying to sell us anti-wrinkle cream and that sort of thing. So anything to do with aging or death, though it is a natural cycle, we tend to ignore. And then when we find ourselves in that situation, whether it's a death of a loved one, a pet, or any sort of ending, traumatic ending, it could be a divorce, it could be a loss of job, we don't have the skills to cope properly. Some religions do have some facilitators, and Christianity, it's usually that falls on the sort of the responsibility of the priest, if you are lucky enough to have a priest who is sort of skilled in that area. So a death walker is one of the number of titles for someone who will help sit with either the dying or the family and sort of help them with that sort of end of life process, whether it's listening to them, if they've got a sort of bucket list that they never achieved, performing rituals or just simply holding space. And I also think that it's the more that we sort of talk about death, sort of breaks down that fear that we have. It's interesting that this fear is often based, again, on a disconnect from our environment. And also, I suppose I'm sort of come back to my interest in Eastern philosophy, because they believe in, well, they believe in reincarnation of various levels, and it is this endless cycle of the soul. And when you start thinking that life is not finite, that everything is part of a big cycle, like the plants in our garden. We plant the seeds, they grow, they fruit or flower, then we harvest them and then they die, the seeds are released, and then the next cycle continues. The same thing happens in our life as well. So that's the role of the deaf doula. Various areas, so that they can actually lead funerals. I've never actually had that experience. I'm more about sort of sitting, holding space. I'm a ritualist. I like doing rituals. And it prepares us for basically something that we're all going to go through, and that's passing. And as I said, also it marks, if we've had big changes in our life, sort of like helping us to sort of stop looking backwards, and then we can sort of like finish that cycle and then begin to move onward in a new life. Areas, like I say, if we've lost our job, then it's time to move on to a new job. If a relationship is broken down, then we can end that relationship. It's almost like sort of tidying up all the loose ends and then moving through. So again, a lot of this sort of ties in with my energetic healing work, because again, it's all about energy as well. And death, they say, is one of the greatest mysteries that we will all go through, and we will all go through one.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's important to be aware and remind us that the soul is eternal, and that the physical body, when we get born, is basically, it's like a death for the soul, metaphorically, or for our spirituality. And when we die, basically, it's our spiritual rebirth, basically. So there's basically nothing to fear, because our soul is eternal.
Yeah, and I think one other thing too is when we start then moving into the soul and the concept of the soul, there are lots of sort of interpretations of what the soul is. But say it's a divine spark or something, it needs to experience things. That's how come it becomes reborn into a physical body, so it can experience life. And sometimes life can be difficult and hard for us, but a lot of it is because our conscious self is aware of the here and now, this physical life that we're living, and we're not aware that our soul, which is on the deeper level, almost like our subconscious, is learning deeper experiences. Or it could be in the Eastern philosophies that talk about karma being sort of experienced. There's some teachings where we always come back to the same soul family as well, which is why we may recognize people, yet we don't know them, but we do know them. We sort of bond with them very closely. So understanding even the concept that maybe there's more to life than just this physical existence, I think can actually help us move through, especially if we're going through difficult times as well. Gives things a little bit of a deeper understanding and purpose behind everything.
Yes, and the unseen realms help our soul reconnect to that original state and remember basically what is besides the physical world.
Certainly,
so
yes.
You also mentioned the other. Can you tell us what you mean by the other, and why is it important in our lives?
Okay, so when I talk about the other, I'm talking about this concept that there is something beyond ourselves. So this is something, a part that's greater than us, but in a way it's not different or so distanced from us. it's almost like the concept that, so I did mention the Hermetic teachings of as above, so below, as within, so without. So we may call this other divine being, a god, goddess, an angel, whatever, but it's still part of us, yet separate. And I do think that it is connected with the unseen realms or the great mysteries which are beyond our understanding in this earthly existence. And it's really interesting when you start thinking about this, that there is something out there. I call it the other, I think the God, goddess, whatever, that it sort of takes us out of our sort of little humanistic existence, thinking that our environment is all there is for us. It begins to start asking or opening up opportunities for us to question as to where or what, why, and in particular, our purpose in life and our connection to the life or the existence that we are living. And I find it really interesting because there has always been a belief, as far as I'm interpreting it, in an other, a presence beyond ourselves. And this could be seen in the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and also in the ancient Sumerian sort of the cuneiform tablet fragments. These are thousands and thousands of years old, of these other beings or entities or gods. We don't really know what they are. They could actually be aspects of our higher consciousness as well. And when we look at these hieroglyphs, we also need to keep in mind that even though the hieroglyphs in particular, say in Egypt, are thousands and thousands of years old, they originated from an oral tradition, which means, especially for us, say in the West, where we don't have a lot of really ancient writings, we do have a very rich oral tradition, and that has come down to us in myth, folklore, fairy tales. And again, this sort of encourages us to sort of look at our own sacred stories for the presence of the other. And I know within my own sort of like culture, we have stories of brownies and fairies, and they are not always portrayed as the sort of romanticized divas or elemental spirits that we see in some of the folk stories. Often they are very mischievous, and they'll take you through into different portals as well, different realms beyond this physical existence. So when we hear the word God, we often think about, say, the Christianized God is sitting on some distant cloud with a long white beard, very distant from us. Yet, when we compare that image to, say, the ancient Egyptians and their hieroglyphs, and their word that we have translated into God, the Natru, that has a completely different meaning, in that the Natru were more than just sort of gods. They were more than just even divine beings. They were actually considered spirits of place, and also representing cosmic principles and laws of the universe. And I suppose a really good example of that is Nayat, who is often depicted wearing just the white ostrich feather, because she is both a goddess, but she's also represented divine truth as well. She's the whole concept of truth. So that, in a way, I think is the other. It goes beyond us. It goes beyond what Carl Jung would classify as an archetype. But we've all had it in all our cultures, and it is connecting back into an essence, I guess, an understanding that there is more to our life and our connection to life than just here on the earth plane. There is a whole other realms. Talking to quantum physics, there's other dimensions too that all sort of like merge in and out. And even, so as I said, in my culture, the fairies and the fae, these are the beings that move in between all the worlds with their messages, with their teachings, and also often with their mischievous behaviors. So when we start opening ourselves up to this belief in something beyond our own selves, so I call it the other, you may call it God, you might call it your higher consciousness, archangels, ancestors, anything like that, it will then begin to realize that we have actually separated ourselves off from this belief due to our sort of limit. I'm trying very hard not to say it's all Christianity's fault, because it sort of is, but it isn't. It's just sort of like a progression of spirituality, how we've sort of moved through the aeons and disconnected ourselves until we got to a stage here in the 21st century where it's very capitalistic and the earth is seen purely as a commodity, because we have lost our connection with the other. We've lost this balance of the other. We may see it just as a masculine. We don't see it as a divine feminine aspect anymore. And anything to do with the divine feminine aspect, we've sort of shunned, ignored, tried to get it removed. And we do the same thing as above, so below with the earth, our mother earth. And again, we have this connection or this disconnection from it. But we're seeing this through as within, so without, because it's been happening for so long as our own perceptions now. So, and now I'm going down a rabbit hole, but getting back in touch with the other, in my spiritual tradition, the other is very much divine feminine, the goddess, got Mother Earth, Gaia, and we bring ourselves back into balance. We start appreciating ourselves more, not in an egotistic way, but appreciating ourselves in the relationship that we have with other people around us, our community, our environment, our collective consciousness, and the roles that we all have to play. Because, at least in my tradition, no one is a spectator. We're all interconnected. So it means that we all have to work together, as opposed to this modern idea where we are very separate as well. So the other, I believe, may have been the ancient gods that walked among us, could have been just an aspect of our higher consciousness that we've separated ourselves from, that we're no longer in contact with. The other could even be Mother Earth. It just means that to start looking at ourselves in relationship to our environment around us. And that then means that we have to start taking a little bit more responsibility to how we show up and take responsibility into our place in the universe, in our own energy as well. So everything that we've talked to so far, for me, it's all interconnected. It all sort of ebbs and flows. And the other is just this understanding that, again, it's something beyond ourselves that we need to sort of take a little bit more thought in our relationship with.
Thank you very much. That was really a beautiful explanation. And yeah, I would like to remind everybody that we only see 1% of the spectrum, and we only hear we perceive a very little part. And usually this is the very masculine part. And if you want to really connect to the unseen realms, you need to connect to your intuition, and then you get a much richer experience out of it. And if you're able to connect to your higher self, you will get the answers of where do I come from, where do we go, on what is my soul purpose. So I would invite everybody to try to connect to your feminine side and your intuition, and to explore the unseen realms. So on our path to be able to connect to the higher self or the other, we also have to go through darkness usually, and people call it the dark night of the soul, and you call it the darkness. So why is it important for us to enter it?
Why is it important for us to enter the darkness? I think increasingly nowadays, when we have the sort of light-filled life, we need it on more levels than just exploring what we've left behind or what we've sort of hidden. And by that I mean, again, sort of like tapping into the works of Carl Jung. He called the darkness the shadow, and the shadow aspect of ourselves are things that were rejected, neglected, refused to own, that we've been ashamed of, that we've all sort of pushed them out of our sort of conscious awareness. But they don't go, they don't disappear. It's almost like sweeping dust under a carpet. They go somewhere, they go into our subconscious and start forming our shadow. And we also put in there what I call the gifts, what Carl Jung called the golden shadow. And these are our talents that actually made us stand out from our peers. And in Australia, we have this thing called tall poppy syndrome, that if you see someone getting almost above their station, so to speak, we like to sort of cut them off at their knees, so they sort of bring them down to earth. But that's a form of putting stuff into their shadow. And the darkness is really important because our shadow is part of us. It might not be pleasant, but it was always part of our makeup. We sort of live in a very, I call it superficial world these days, but it's also love and light, and everybody's perfect, allegedly on the surface. Yet if you go past that veneer, and it usually is just a very thin veneer, people are having all sorts of problems. And again, that is normal for us. The darkness gives us time for reflection. It gives us time for rest. There is a beauty, I believe, in the darkness. Again, I like to use Mother Earth as an analogy, and you think about it's within the darkness of Mother Earth that the seeds rest before they are ready to germinate. It's within the darkness of the cosmos above us that we can see the wonders of the stars and the meteors and the planets. So not everything is fearful or evil. That again has been sort of a misconception that's being built up. I don't want to say Christianity, but it is sort of our Western mind. It's our Western mindset over the centuries to make us fear the darkness. But when you sort of boil down the words, or actually look at the whole concept of what is darkness, darkness isn't the absence of light. Darkness just means that there is still light within it. It's just at a very lower end of the scale. So there's always this potential, as Carl Jung will say, the golden shadow in the shadow. So there's always this potential of something ready to be reborn. And often we can only get in touch with that, especially in our modern world of so many distractions, is through going within, reflection, contemplation, meditation. And that helps also heal us. We talked about energy healing earlier. We've got so many distractions happening in our world, especially these days, that it can be very easy to get overwhelmed or caught up in movements or suggestions, giving our power over, get caught up with the flow, and finding out that we've actually lost touch with our soul purpose, or we can't find out what our soul purpose is because there's too many distractions out there. When we enter the darkness, when we stop for a moment and start going within, we move from our head consciousness, our sort of ego self. I call it our solar self because the face, the person that we show up in the world, and we move back into our body, which our heart, our soul. To me, this is sort of our lunar self. This is the conscious energy. So this is masculine. Our body, our soul is the feminine energy, the lunar, and that's where the mysteries are. That's where we can gain a better understanding of who we are, what we're supposed to do. And sometimes it's an opportunity for us just simply to breathe. And our world seems to be moving so fast these days that sometimes we forget to breathe, which adds to overwhelm, which then can add to mental health issues. And coming back to the body, sitting in the dark, whether it's our a metaphor of just going within ourselves, meditating, being by ourselves in contemplation, and just resting. And our bodies need to rest, just like the seed needs to rest in Mother Earth.
Thank you, beautiful. So yeah, we live in a polar world with polarity, and if we look at the stars and the night sky, then we need darkness to also see the beauty of the stars. So it's all part of the experience of the soul in this 3D world. And it's also, I think, important to also be able to forgive oneself. Like forgiveness is very important to be able to reconnect to your higher self, and also to get that energy flow and release all these, let's say, low vibration out of your body so that you can rise up.
And I think it's recently I recently saw a science article where science has proven that getting out in nature, sitting under a tree, walking barefoot on the ground actually does have positive benefits for our own connection, our own sort of mental health, opening up our channels. And this is something that energetic healers, earth-centric practitioners, Indigenous peoples have known for many, many centuries. It's that, yes, it helps for wanting to sort of connect, open up our energetic channels, explore, or get out of the sort of busyness of the mundane, coming back to the earth. And it also helps balance our poles, our masculine and feminine poles as well.
So you also mentioned surrendering and that it is important. Could you explain to what we have to surrender and why it is important?
This is something that I realized when I came out of I'm part of my healing journey. I was a very logical person, and I lived very much in my head, and probably still do these days as well. But when I talk about surrender, it's sometimes we just need to realize that we don't need to know everything. Everything doesn't need to be perfect. And to surrender is basically to get out of the head. I do that personally through mantras or sacred chants, with a mala. You can do it through anything that's repetitious, in sort of meditation. And again, if we find ourselves too much in our head, too distracted, too overwhelming, or being overwhelmed with the world around us, our lives, situation that we find ourselves in, that also starts causing more of a disconnect. So when we surrender, we're basically surrendering our ego, or the attachment that our ego has on things. And this is what our ego likes. It likes getting hold of things. It likes structure. It likes things all the same. But the environment that we live in, our natural world, our environment of our own physical body ebbs and flows with the moon. So everything's changing. And this is where I find, from, as I said, from personal experience as well, the more we hang on to something, especially if, say, you're going through a health crisis or your world that you know it may be falling to bits or feels like it's falling to bits, and you're trying to hang on to something like looking back towards the past, you'll probably find that you get more and more anxious, overwhelmed, things seem to get out of control very quickly. So all that is head stuff. As soon as we give our conscious mind something to, say, distract itself, and this is where repeating a mantra or an affirmation or a charm or a prayer or anything like that gives our conscious mind something to latch onto, then we're sort of surrendering that control. And it enables us to get in touch with either, I call it the other, God, Goddess, ancestor, higher consciousness, divine aspect, our soul purpose, our inner knowing to come through and sort of clears the way. So this is why I believe that surrendering is important, knowing our boundaries, knowing our limits, and often it can be something that can also enhance both our spiritual world, our mundane world as well, because it helps us be able to see clearly. Being energetic beings, we tend to hook ourselves into or onto emotions and have emotional attachments very quickly to things. And even surrendering and letting go of those emotional attachments doesn't necessarily mean that we are severing relationships or whatever, or it just means that we are surrendering what has sort of been clouding our judgment. Then we can look at, say, a relationship or a job or a situation a little bit more clearly once we've sort of gotten all that sort of mind stuff out of the way. And that way we can sort of engage more with our soul purpose, become more sort of true to ourselves, and really ascertain what's truly important in our lives, and also what brings us joy and what brings us benefit.
Thank you very much. That was a beautiful explanation. Yeah, we have to remember that the ego is made for the 3D world, and if we want to experience the unseen realms, we have to surrender and trust the heart and your intuition, because the soul remembers all these unseen realms and everything there is. But the ego will always question it and say, no, it's not there. You can't see it, or, so it's important to surrender to your heart and to your intuition so you can fully experience it.
And I think also the ego tends to dismiss things that it doesn't understand, especially when it comes to the unseen realms. I would say that majority of people watching this have probably felt, the hairs sort of like someone's patting their head or blowing gently on their face, or getting pins and needles when, or goosebumps when someone's mentioned something or they've heard something. That is messages from the unseen realm, whether you call it spirit, God, Goddess, whatever. But our logical mind, our ego mind, often dismisses them. And if we want to truly tap into our soul, our guides, whatever, or go across that abyss into the unseen world, we've got to bypass our gatekeeper, which is our conscious mind.
Yes, exactly. So if we are unsure or afraid of the darkness, how can we enter it?
Oh, that's a good question, because a lot of our fears, I believe, are either preconceived or they have been externally sort of planted into our subconscious. It can take courage. I think a lot of it comes down to our belief systems as well. If no doubt the audience watching this are very curious about the unseen realm, so at least we're all one step ahead of anybody else. A lot of it comes, and you did mention, comes down to trust. if we believe in God's guides, higher consciousness, our soul purpose, then we must also believe that our higher self, whoever's watching out for us, the other, I call it, will never lead us anywhere that we're not meant to go. There might be situations that we go through that are maybe horrendous or challenging, but that's often because our soul needs to experience a lesson on a deeper level that we're not consciously aware. So having this trust, having this sort of faith in our higher consciousness that will guide us where we're meant to go. We also need to start asking the questions that if we are afraid of, say, the darkness or the unseen realms, why? Where did that fear come from? As I said, the ego likes familiarity, it likes being boxed in, it likes knowing what it's wanting to do. So it could just simply be a fear of the unknown. And if that's the case, then we need to sort of rewire ourselves. Instead of looking at something in fear, look at it in awe or wonder. Look at the potentials or the possibilities that could be waiting for us, as opposed to seeing it as sort of a breakout of tradition or where we are now. We also need to sort of look at why we are fearing it, so the unseen realms or the darkness, or sitting quietly and getting to know who we are. It can be uncomfortable. I think I've mentioned this before. When we sort of go inward, it's not a short fix. There is an American poet, also I think it's a Jungian analyst as well, Robert Bly. He has this analogy that we carry around this bag with us. And for the first 20 years of our life, we put all the stuff that we don't want in this bag. And then for the rest of our life, we're starting to pull things out of the bag. And the bag that he describes is what he calls the shadow. So the stuff that we're pulling out of the bag will make us uncomfortable, will make us scared or afraid. But then we realize, okay, was this a memory from my childhood? Something that happened at night scared me, and I've been sort of holding on to that emotional attachment, that memory. I'm now an adult. Why am I still hanging on to it? Can I not move past or see that experience as an adult? So moving through our fear, and of course it's going to be different situations for different people, but a lot of it too is coming back and taking responsibility for our own selves. Do we need help? Do we need to take on, go to a counselor or a professional? Do we need to meditate and say hello to our fear? But it is actually part of us as well. Or it could be something that we've inherited from family members, it's come down from our ancestors, and it no longer applies to us today. Then we can take that responsibility and releasing it or changing it into, as I said earlier, into something that, an approach that offers us an opportunity of awe, wonder, possibilities, and shaping it that way.
Thank you very much. So you are offering a heart expansion meditation as a free gift. Could you share your view on why it's important to expand your heart?
In my traditions, the heart is where the soul lies. And I do think that we live in a world that's very individualistic. I wouldn't say self-centered, but it's coming to the surface that maybe a lot of us have a fractured relationship with the whole concept of love, heart, and anything in relation to that. If we're looking at where our heart is from a yogic teaching, especially when we're looking at the chakras, it is the gateway. It's the gateway between the three bottom lower chakras that connect us to the material realm. And then we've got the upper three higher chakras, which connect us to the spiritual realms to the other realms, to realms beyond this physical body. So it needs to be open for the energy to flow from the cosmos down to us, and also from earth energy to cosmos. And I do find, because when I do meditations, I bring up the two energies, or bring the cosmic energy down, the earth energy up into the heart center. And then it's from the heart that you can then expand it out to your environment, to your loved ones, to your family, to your fur babies, if you don't like humans, to the world in general. And the heart, anahata, the heart chakra, is, at least to me, probably one of the most, all the main chakras are important, but because it is that portal, that gateway between the physical realm, physical chakras, and the higher chakras, to me, it needs to be opened. It needs to be able to expand out, because it is this meeting point between the two energies, the masculine solar cosmic energy and Mother Earth, her earth energy coming up.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there's a saying that I like. It says, lose your mind, find your heart. And I like this so much because I could experience it. And if you lose your monkey mind and find your heart, you will get so much more quiet, and you will not have all these ideas in your head, but you will find your center, and it's going to be much more quieter and much more happy place to be. So opening your heart is definitely one of the important steps. So before we close, would you like to share what your latest project you are working on?
Oh, okay. Sort of winding things down at the moment, because I've got spending some time with my family, but every new year, this is every new calendar year, I do offer, and it's email based, a 21-day journey to freedom with Kali, because Kali is one of my probably favorite goddesses, even though she's a little bit frightening, a little bit awe-inspiring. And so this is a 21-day email-based sadhana, which is a personal spiritual journey. For every day, I send you an email, and it can be setting up an altar. It will include mantras to connect with Kali. It will include poems, stories, her mythology, modern interpretations of her. So you can really move into this, though she's fierceful. She is one of the great teachers. She offers us the opportunity to surrender, to put our head, which is that ego, on her chopping block. Then she helps us free ourselves from the limitations, especially when we get too caught up in our head. So I usually do that, as I said, at the beginning of each year for 21 days. And any other offerings that I have, I do have a couple of courses through UDEMY. I have a Kali course there. I have a Celtic Goddess course there. And I also have an introduction to the Dark Goddess, which sort of ties in my interpretations of all the various dark goddesses and shadow work and how to work with these beings. So any other offerings that I do have from time to time will all be on my website, which is Mystical Soul Academy, as well as on social media, and people can find me there as well.
Thank you very much. And I would also like to mention your free gift. So when you sign up to Frances' free newsletter, you will receive the Expand Your Heart meditation that will guide you in expanding your heart center, also known in Sanskrit as the Anahata chakra, out into all other layers of your energetic body. The link is below the video. So thank you, Frances, for all that you've shared and the wonderful journey into the unseen realms that you've taken us, for your wonderful light and energy, and for your wisdom. And thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you and for everybody else.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you.